Hi, I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. I'm joined by David Bozell for America. David, how are you?
Good, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
The United Nations, you might have heard on them, they bring together all the countries on Earth and they try to discuss topics. They try to have fair, open discussion. And yet somehow in the last decade, maybe longer than that, last couple of decades, they have gone a little further left, and are now like that welfare family that has one rich relative that they all expect to take care of them. They keep coming back to America for more and more and more. They keep criticizing whatever America is doing, but still asking for more and more and more. Senator Mike Lee, among others, has said, maybe it's time to stop.
Yeah.
He has actually filed a bill that says, let's get out of the United Nations. Let's not fund them anymore. Let's not even participate. Is this a good idea or a bad idea?
Long time coming. Should have happened years ago. I think Trump even campaigned on getting out of the UN. Many Republican candidates nationally have suggested that on the dais. But it's awesome to have that in legislative form. Does it pass this Senate? No. Will it pass a thin margin Senate? Probably not. But it's important for the Republican Party to have this type of legislation in the pipeline. Like I said, it's been talked about forever. And Mike Lee and some others have decided enough is enough. The United Nations were painfully slow in condemning Hamas for their October 7th attack, painfully slow. And the statement fell on deaf ears and was not as strong as it needed to be. They've just put China, put China as a human rights, on the Human Rights Commission within the United States. China, just the polar opposite of human rights. But we've got to share that
and they've
table.
got someone from Nigeria as the treasurer of the organization right now.
Right. I mean, we've got to share that table with China and Nigeria. I don't think so. I think we're pouring $12 billion. It was the latest in 2021 towards the UN. Enough is enough. They don't share our values. They should be on bended knee thanking us for how generous we are. And if they don't share that, if they don't promote how generous we are, if they don't thank the American taxpayer for how generous we've been, we're feeding the world. I mean, we're feeding hundreds of countries throughout the world with our goods. If they're not on bended knee thanking the American taxpayer, Mike Lee's right to say enough is enough.
You mentioned how extraordinarily slow they were in condemning Hamas and its attacks in Israel and the innocent people that were slaughtered there. It's important that the United Nations, the role they are supposed to play, is kind of referee. They are supposed to be above it all. And the fact that they were slow is important. I was just traveling in the Middle East, and I put on Bahrain TV, I put on Saudi TV, I put on Al Jazeera out of Qatar, I put on Omani TV, and every single one of them, without fail, talks about Israel's war on Gaza.
Wow.
The perception that among the entire Arab world is this is Israel being unfair, attacking people, and innocent people, Palestinians, are being killed here. Right. Children, women. War's a horrible thing, and there are innocent people being killed, but there is no mention whatsoever of the innocents that were killed when Hamas staged their attack. And so, to me, the United Nations isn't just delinquent, isn't just inconvenient when they don't speak it, as this body that the whole world goes to, listens to, participates in. They have to speak up,
right,
so that there is a voice being heard even in the Middle East, where many of these television networks are giving one side of the story.
Right. So if the UN is going to buy that story, hook, line, and sinker, that this was Israel's war, and Israel provoked all of this, if they're going to buy into that, the United States position needs to be, we cannot endorse that position with our money. And by giving it our money, we're endorsing it by default. We're making life 1,000 times more difficult for Israel. So I've just come to a point when it comes to the UN, if you're not going to share our values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the United States ought not be funding a body that they could walk into a Harvard faculty meeting and get a standing ovation. They could walk into a Pennsylvania University faculty meeting and get a standing ovation. That's not a body that the United States taxpayer ought to be funding.
Well, and the United Nations talks about things like encouraging the West to eat less meat. They don't want us to have a steak or burger or pork or any of these things because of climate change. They're using climate change, the United Nations is, as a tool to try to redistribute wealth.
Right.
And there is no specific plan on how or why there is specific money needed in West Africa to fight climate change. All they know is they can take money from the United States, send it to West Africa in the name of climate change. Yeah. What happens to it, we don't know.
We don't know.
And I think that the agency, the organization has gone way past what it was intended for, and now is trying to dole out, they're trying to put a worldwide tax on everywhere.
Well, it's been another one of Mike Lee's complaints, is that where's the oversight of where the $12 billion are going? What is it going to? Within Mike Lee's bill, another thing I want to applaud him for, it defunds our participation in the World Health Organization, which Donald Trump did by executive order. But one of Donald Trump's missteps, I guess, in his presidency is he did not codify into legislation more of what he did via executive order. This is an attempt to codify that policy into legislative practice. So getting out of the World Health Organization was a huge win, and for Donald Trump. I mean, the base just stood up and applauded post-COVID. Of course, the media hated it. But the more the media hated it, the more the better Donald Trump's numbers were. So the fact that Mike Lee's legislation codifies that into bill form is a terrific step.
Well, and the World Health Organization is, in concept, having research, having communication, having people discuss when something horrible like COVID happens, that the whole world communicates. Wonderful concept. Right. In practice, it doesn't happen that way. In fact, much of the information they put out turned out to be false.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
Again, a great idea that has just gone astray. So the idea that maybe the United States reels it back in my mind, great idea.
Well, WHO also participated in protecting those who may have been responsible for the pandemic in the first place. So again, why we're funding these types of entities internationally is anyone's guess. It was good intentions. Well-intentioned by some legislatures, years ago, but they've got addicted to the cash and gone into these liberal streams and values that the United States no longer shares or no longer should share.
Final question on that is, does the United Nations resonate with voters? If you're a Democrat, do you think, we must stay involved with the United Nations and this is so important that I'm going to vote that way? Or if you're a Republican, do you think, this is so important we must abandon them? Or is it just something that us here in D.C. talk about and speculate about, and the average person who's going to Little League and ballet doesn't care?
It's a good base issue. It used to be a better base issue, but because Republicans have failed so many times at adhering to this promise, this campaign promise of getting out of the UN, people don't believe that the Republicans have any interest in doing anything about it. So that's why another reason why Mike Lee's bill is so important. It injects some new energy and injects a seriousness of purpose. The Republican Party platform has long stated that we ought not be funding these types of activities within the UN. It's time to get serious about adhering to some of these commitments, and I think the American people are just frustrated more than any other time that I can remember with just the lack of results, particularly coming out of the Republican Party. So yes, there is a fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, that kind of attitude. However, Mike Lee's bill is an attempt to resurrect what used to be a very good issue for Republicans.
For America, he is David Bozell. For the Washington Times, I'm Tim Constantine. Thank you and Merry Christmas.